listened to a very exciting talk by Sven Meister and Leonard Fehring about digital health application, and I do not want to waste any time, so I just hand over to Sven and Leonard, and I guess you two will introduce yourselves and after the talk, we will again have time for discussion with you about your interesting topics. So thanks a lot, Sven and Leonard, and the floor is yours. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to offer you all a warm welcome. Like already mentioned, I think today it's more a hot welcome as we have temperatures up to 40 degrees here in Germany. I'm not sure whether somebody came outside from Germany or the European Union, but 40 degrees, it's a lot for this region here in Germany. Yes, what will the presentation for today? It's about the digital health applications. I think maybe a difficult term if it comes up to the German DiGA concept, but we will follow on this later on. And we will put some focus regarding the human factor in it. So the human factor in interaction, in action with digital health innovations, because it's all about humans, treatment about humans. And thus we have to take care of those interacting with the innovation we are creating. So as Leonard is handling this slide, please, the next slide. Yes, so some brief overview about the presentation today. We'll start with introduction, who we are, about the baseline topic, and we'll continue with some definitions about mobile health, the German DiGA concept or digital health applications. Then we will sketch up the current mHealth landscape in Germany to give you some insights, because we didn't know whether you come from Germany or not. It's quite difficult. For those who are familiar with it, might be not that interesting. We'll see. Then we'll talk about the adoption of mHealth DiGA in Germany. These are some insights from our own research. And at last, we will talk about the scientific innovation, or is it an economic hype? It's all about outcomes. So we would like to increase efficiency and efficacy with digitalization. But what's in this digital health application topic? We also did one study about it, and Leonard will present it later on. So who we are. The Witten University is a very small university. We are located in the western part of Germany. We call it the rural area, or in Germany, Ruhrpott. So we are surrounded by larger cities like Essen, Bochum, Dortmund. You might know it from if you're interested in soccer. And yes, we only have two faculties, the Faculty of Health and the Faculty of Economics and Society. The latter has courses of studies like social data science, health management, and other things. And in the Faculty of Health, we have medicine, dentistry, psychology, and nursing science. The chair of health informatics is part of the Faculty of Health, especially the Department of Human Medicine. So we are educating medical students every day regarding digitalization, and Leonard also in medical topics as a physician. So I think this is important because the share of health informatics sounds very technical, but we are addressing a lot of topics that are not that technological driven. For example, developing measurements for digital maturity in healthcare, concepts to measure digital and data competence in healthcare, methodologies to develop in a participatory way health technologies. And the last topic that's important for today, human-machine interaction. We have an interdisciplinary team with physicians, psychologists, computer scientists. Yes. The next slide will now introduce ourselves. So, like already known, my name is Sven, and I have a computer scientist background. I studied medical and bioinformatics at the University of Bielefeld. Then I did my PhD at the Technical University in Dortmund. In parallel, I worked for the Fraunhofer Institute for Software and Systems Engineering, and I'm still affiliated to Fraunhofer now since more than 20 years. Yeah, so I'm representing more or less the technological part of our research, but we are trying to do research in health supply to optimize health supply, and therefore I'm very happy having Leonard today with me. So as a physician, and therefore I would like to hand over to you, Leonard.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to our presentation today. My name is Leonard. I'm a medical doctor by training, and after med school, I decided I wanted to do something completely different before I end up the rest of my life in a hospital. So I joined the business consultancy McKinsey's, and I worked in consultancy for a couple of years with various stakeholders in the medical system, like health insurance companies and ministries of health across Europe, also a lot of pharmaceutical companies. During that time, I supported a lot of these companies with their digital strategies in the healthcare system. And that was also the time when I came across the chair of health informatics at the University of Hennecke and Sven Meister. And we started some research projects together. And actually, a very fruitful cooperation has come out of that during the last years. I recently finished my habilitation in digital health, and nowadays I work as a doctor in gastroenterology at the Helios University Hospital in Wuppertal. So thanks for giving us the opportunity today to present, and I hand it over back to you, Sven, for a quick introduction on the human factor.
Okay, so the human factor, always the question, what's in for me? I think for today, my role should be very easy because a lot is about humans and healthcare. At first, I'm a human myself, so I believe it. And second, health supply is also sometimes important for me in the role of a patient. And therefore, I would like to take you on a journey about digitalization in healthcare and the human factor to be creative, get into a mode of asking questions. And I think one nice thing is this creative stuff about storytelling. You might have heard about it. The idea is to tell some kind of inspiring story. We'll try to do this with our presentation today. And one methodology to do this is a hero's journey. A hero is, like mentioned on the slide, a person who is admired for great or brave acts or fine qualities. And yes, who is a hero in a health system? Is it a patient? Is it a physician? Are it nurses or all together? We will take this with us. And this hero's journey is a game between the known and the unknown. So some kind of adventure. It takes you out from a situation with whom you are familiar with, and will take you into situations with uncertainty, the unknown. And might it be that digitalization is such kind of adventure? So taking you into a situation where you do not know what will happen in the future, if it is good or it's not good. So it's uncertain. And this might be a problem. It might be a problem when we look onto the hero's journey at the very first steps. So you have the ordinary existing world, you have the call to the adventure, and then there is this point of refuse the call. So you can decide against the adventure. And that might be a point very often in the healthcare system that people decide against digitalization. But why is it so? So that's the human factor that makes this decision. And for us, it's interesting to understand why they refuse it. So if you decide for the adventure, then in the letter you will have something like an enemy. And again, the question, might it be that digitalization is some kind of enemy you have to fight against? Or should it be something to work in a collaborative manner with, or in cooperation to solve the problems that we have in health supply? So another question we have regarding the heroes that are daily trying to treat us in the best way, and we should pay attention to. So the next slide now is getting more into us as a human. You might know the self-determination theory. What we are interested in is physical and mental pleasure, enjoyment. That's important for us to be motivated to do things. And the theory is mentioning three aspects that are important. That is autonomy. We like autonomy, and it's quite difficult if digitalization is reducing our autonomy. So, for example, if you have some sheet of paper, you can sketch something in the left corner, in the right corner, and so on. So you have a lot of degrees of freedoms in it to write something down. If you have a digital form, it might get difficult because you are asked to fill the form in a very structured way. And that might reduce the autonomy and therefore reduce motivation. Competence, another important point. Therefore, we are educating medical students to ensure knowledge in digitalization. We don't want to be under or over challenged when it comes up to competences. And we have to ensure the right level, but what is the right level for whom? It might be different depending on the person we are looking on. And last but not least, social interaction, relatedness. We like to get in touch with other persons, and digitalization on the one hand could be a chance to bring persons in touch with each other. On the other hand, it could reduce the amount of social interaction. Also, like with competence, we have to identify the right level of social interaction. And all these three aspects has to be paid attention to when we are developing digital health innovations. So to be motivative. On the next slide, we will see who are the heroes we are talking about. For those who are not from Germany, we are having around 84 million of inhabitants at the moment, like you can see there. We have the statutory insured and private insured, a lot of employees working in the healthcare sector as physicians, as caregivers. We have a lot of people in need of care. And all those are creating the systems we are working in with individual needs to realize good treatment, have a good work-life balance, and other factors that are important for those humans. And always we should have we have to pay attention to them when we are developing digital innovations. There is an increasing market, so some kind of commercialization, and commercialization might be a critical point. We have privately financed system. There might be the situation that commercialization is a important part, but we are now talking about state-driven systems, beverage systems, like in Scandinavia, or the Bismarck-oriented system here in Germany. So the mode of financing things is different, and there is a critical discussion about to what should we pay, or what should we pay for as a system, especially also should we pay, for example, for the DiGA concept. What is the medical outcome for whom, and to give them structure, to find evidence on the sense of this, for the sense of those kind of digital health innovation. But there is an increasing market also in Germany. How complex this is, also when it comes up to terms, shows this slide. We have different kind of systems: patient monitoring system, care support system, digital diagnostic systems. And at the end, you will find the digital therapeutics, a term we will also use later on. And yes, what it is, Leonard will define later, but you will see that you have a broad, a broad amount of digital health technologies, and sometimes it's quite hard to understand what a digital technology really is doing. Is it a medical product or not? Several questions that arose with those kind of terms. And last, very old slide, to be honest, should be from 2019, but it is showing the amount of commercialization we have. A lot of companies that arose during the time, but also an effect of insolvency we have also today. So a problem of what should be financed in what kind of manner, especially in Germany. I think all of you know what is the amount you earn as a computer scientist, and if you calculate it, what you need as a company to produce something, you have to earn a lot to pay them all off, and therefore it's quite a difficult situation. So commercialization, and what are the commercial aspects, and how can you finance all the things you have to do, like studies and so on. So that's all, and perhaps there were new companies you can now attach to this slide, and others now are insolvent. Yeah. I'm thinking about, Leonard, if we should do perhaps a short break for discussion, or what is the normal manner you do it, Sebastian or Christian?
Typically, we do the full presentation and then have a discussion,
okay.
But it's totally fine if you prefer to do it different, to do it as you like.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Okay.
Just do it as
so my suggestion would be, if there's nothing very important, because the discussion could take time and then we will run out of time, we will first of all get through the presentation and we'll skip the discussion to the end. Yeah. Okay. So the definition of mHealth and DiGA, I think, yes, we can take the topic I already mentioned. I, as a reviewer for different journals, I see that there's a complex use of on unstructured use of terms. And to be honest, also for me, writing an article, always it's difficult to get the right term. As you can see here, digital health intervention, digital health technology, digital therapeutics, and you will find different definitions for those kind of terms. It's really hard to get through, and my recommendation always is to decide for one definition and use it consequently in a paper and not switching through all the terms, because as a reviewer it's quite hard to get through it. We will focus on the later term because it's describing the things we are doing in the best way. As we are also talking about medical products, we are very much in a treatment scenario, so that fits best to us, but also to give you some impression about the diverse use of terms. And now Leonard will continue to make it more concrete with the terms mHealth and the DiGA term.
Thank you, Sven. As you mentioned already, there are quite a lot of different terms around there. And I think this graph here on the left-hand side pretty much depicts all the terms that we need today for the presentation. So first of all, there's this concept of software as a medical device. So software that is used in a medical context and which is somehow certified as a medical device. On the other hand, there's this definition of mobile health, which more or less says that there is a software that is provided via a mobile device, such as a smartphone. And then you have this digital therapeutics, which is a subgroup of software that actually allows the treatment of certain diseases. And then within this group, there is this special form called the digital health applications, or in German it would be Digitale Gesundheitsanwendungen, which are abbreviated as DiGA. And the special thing about these DiGA is that those are health applications that are provided usually via a mobile phone that are certified by the BfArM, which is the Bundesamt für Arzneimittel und Medizinprodukte, so the similar institution to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in the US. And these DiGAs are certified. They have proven medical benefit to the patients, and afterwards they can be reimbursed by the statutory health insurance companies. So they're actually a real part of the services of the healthcare system in Germany. And the interesting thing is that Germany was actually the first country worldwide to introduce such a general concept where mobile phone apps are reimbursed by the health insurance companies. And of course, there have been mobile applications that treat health conditions or provide wellness offerings before. And these applications we tend to call mHealth or mobile health apps. The defining part here is that they are not certified by a governmental institution, but that just any person can upload an app into the app stores of the mobile phones and can provide certain services there. So let's deep dive a bit into the digital health applications, the German DiGAs. Here you find a list of things that need to be fulfilled before you can register as a DiGA in Germany. And summarizing this, one could say that on the one hand, you need to register and get classified as a medical product. In the past, it was only allowed until the level of 2A CE certification. There are different classes that describe how complex a software or a medical product is. And 2B product actually is one that interprets data, medical data, and then makes its own decision without a human in a loop. And at the beginning, that was not allowed for DiGA, but there has been an update in the laws, and now you can also create a DiGA that actually makes medical decisions. Then, per definition, of course, this DiGA has to stand on the digital technology, and it needs to be patient-facing. It has to prove a medical benefit or healthcare benefit, and obviously you have to comply with certain laws of data protection and data privacy. Let us skip to the next page and look at how, as a patient, you can receive DiGA. And that is actually very interesting because usually when you get a service from the medical health system, you need a prescription from the doctor. And this is also the case for the DiGA. So you can go to your primary care doctor, for example, with a certain condition, and then your primary care doctor could prescribe you this DiGA on the very standard prescription formula. And then you hand in this prescription to your health insurance company. The health insurance company sends you an access code as the patient. And then you can download the DiGA from an app store, enter the access code, and then the DiGA manufacturer will get a reimbursement by sending an invoice to the health insurance company, so the patient doesn't have to pay anything. This is really much a similar process to prescription of a normal pharmaceutical product. But then for the DiGAs, the state has opened a second option on how you could receive such an app, and that is that you can apply for a certain DiGA directly at your health insurance company if a doctor has given you an ICD code with a matching diagnosis in the past. I think this is a very interesting idea, how the Ministry of Health here or the government tried to circumvent the prescribing physicians here. And I think that might be due to the expectations that there would be a low adoption rate from doctors at the beginning. But to get the system running, there was created a system where patients themselves could seek out for DiGAs. So if we have some DiGA or potential DiGA developers among us, it might be interesting to understand how do I actually become a DiGA, or how can I register my mobile health app as a DiGA in Germany. And this here is a simplified summary of how you can get listed as an official DiGA. So first of all, you start with fulfilling the necessary requirements. So you need to build an app that is data secure and that adheres to the medical product standards. And then you can send your first proposal to the BfArM, which is the licensing institution in Germany. They look at all the data that you provide them, and then you need to prove medical benefit or positive care effect, as they call it in the law. And here is a very interesting thing again, that it creates new options for product development in the healthcare system, I think. Because at the beginning, when the DiGA were developed in Germany, obviously there was not a lot of evidence that these mobile health apps actually have a medical benefit. So there was created the option of a fast track approval for DiGA. And this fast track approval allows you to enter the healthcare market and get reimbursement from the health insurance companies for 12 months, even though you don't have any scientific studies that show a positive care effect yet. And during these 12 months, you can collect data and create evidence that your product actually works. And then after these 12 months, a decision will be made whether you can become a DiGA or not. Or, of course, if you have the positive care effects proven before, you can become a DiGA right away. The interesting thing here is that within these 12 months, where you don't have any scientific proof yet that your app works, you're allowed to choose the price for your product freely. And then after these 12 months, there will be a price negotiation with health insurance companies. And we'll come back to that point later, because it's quite interesting to see which market dynamics have evolved from this particular pricing system that's set up here in Germany. One more side note regarding the DiGA is also a way for the government to support actually adoption of these new technologies, is that the law allows DiGA manufacturers to actually advertise their products to patients. That is usually not allowed in the healthcare system. For example, a pharmaceutical company, they can advertise their products to doctors, but usually it's not allowed to advertise to patients. And the law is not that strict here on DiGA. So a lot of DiGA companies are actually promoting their products quite openly among the entire society. Well, so far so good for the definition of DiGA. And in the next step, I'd like to give you a short overview on the current landscape, how mHealth and DiGA are actually distributed in Germany right now, and how many apps are on the market already. So let us first look at mHealth in general. This is a slide not looking at DiGA only, but on the broader scape, with also all the mHealth apps that are not necessarily certified. This was a study published that looked at the offers for elderly people. And I think it's quite interesting to see here that a lot of the DiGA or the mHealth apps on the market are actually in this wellness and management, that wellness management area. And some portion is also in the disease management field, where we would expect the German DiGAs actually. And here's another graph that's not that new, but you can see a quite interesting trend here, where the lifestyle and the fitness and wellness apps actually lose a bit of share, and instead the disease-specific mHealth apps are more and more getting market share. So obviously, there is a trend to develop new disease-specific apps that then can be also certified as DiGA later. And here's a distribution on different diseases that we find in these disease-specific areas. And we see this trend actually across all countries on the world, and also in the DiGA field, that especially in the mental health and behavioral disorders, so depression, anxiety, and so on. These are the fields where we see quite a lot of DiGA coming to the market, which might be because these kind of conditions can be treated rather well with digital tools. Now, let's look at the more narrow part of the definition, the DiGA only. this is an overview that we created for you today to show how many DiGAs are there on the market at the moment. And again, here we see that a lot of DiGA, in total 27, are in this indication group of the psychiatric diseases, mainly depression and anxiety disorders. Then there's quite a lot of DiGA looking at musculoskeletal diseases. This is mainly back pain, and you can do some physiotherapy online to improve your back muscles and so on. And then here in the endocrinology field, this is mainly apps that focus on obesity and weight loss. This is a huge topic, and these apps, as you can see here on the as you can see on the next slide, is also the ones that are prescribed the most. So obesity is a very obviously a very popular field for DiGA. Then there are some smaller indications here in the neurological field. Also some apps that treat tinnitus, so a ring in your ear, are very popular. And then there's some oncology support for patients. This is an overview from the SHI, so the statutory health insurance in Germany, where they created a report to show what are the most prescribed DiGAs. And here, the red bar, that's the Oviva Direct. That's actually an app that's giving nutrition advice to patients with obesity. And then all the blue ones here, they treat mainly psychological conditions like depression, anxiety. And also here, the red one, again, Senadio, that's the competitor to Oviva. They are also focusing on weight loss. So it looks like the market is more or less dominated by weight loss and psychological conditions. This slide is, the data of this slide is a bit older, but I wanted to highlight here one interesting fact. You see again here the number of activated apps per provider. And here at the back, you can see the share of people that applied for these apps via their health insurance company directly. So not having a doctor in the loop of the prescription. And one thing that I think is quite interesting that, for example, here, this Kronos Edera app, this is an app that has a almost 40% share of self-application at the SHI. And this app targets men who have a problem with impotency. So a topic that you'd probably rather not talk so freely with your doctor, or where there can be a lot of shyness involved. So this is obviously a field where men like to reach out to their health insurance company directly and not involving a doctor. And in a way, you could see that as empowerment of patients here, reaching out for treatment and organizing for themselves. All right. We were initially planning a little discussion here on what your experiences with DiGA have been so far. But I think we can skip that and finish our presentation and then put that to the end of the discussion, right?
Yeah, maybe if you like to, you can put some kind of comment in the chat about your experience. We will collect it later on and use it for the discussion, because we have to pay a little bit attention to the time so that we not run out of time. Yes.
All right, so we're looking forward to your comments. And until then, let's jump over to the next topic. And Sven and I actually did a lot of research in the last years focusing on the adoption of DiGA in Germany, and we'd like to present you some of our insights in the following slides. First of all, let's look at the adoption of physicians. And what we did in our first study is that rather shortly after the introduction of the DiGA in Germany, which was at the end of 2019, we started a big survey among psychotherapists and physicians from all specialties in Germany. We have surveyed more than 1,000 doctors and asked them, well, what do you think about DiGA, and are you happy with this new law that the apps can be reimbursed by the health insurance companies? And in general, we see that doctors are actually quite positive and welcomed the introduction of digital health apps in Germany. However, it was quite interesting to see that only a few of them said, well, it's quite likely that I'm also going to prescribe them. And that is also something that we have seen over the last years, that the uptake or the prescription of DiGA in Germany has been quite slow. And we have been trying to understand why is that. If you look at, again, a recent report from the health insurance companies who are the actual prescribers of these DiGAs, then you can see here that the main part is actually prescribed by primary care doctors. They make up for 50% of all the DiGA. And they more or less prescribe all of them, whereas then the depression and psychotherapy apps, of course, are mainly prescribed here by psychotherapists and psychiatrists. The apps for back pain are mainly prescribed by orthopedics, so there's actually no real surprise. But I think it's interesting to remember that 50% is prescribed by the primary care doctor, so they're very important enabler for the uptake of prescription or of digital health apps. So in our survey, in the next step, we asked the doctors, what is the reason that you are hesitant to prescribe? What are certain barriers? And most of them said, well, I don't have enough information to understand these DiGA. And also, I think there's insufficient medical evidence that these apps actually work, which I think is quite interesting, because to become a DiGA, you have to prove your medical benefit to the patient. So obviously here there is a lack of communication of positive results with the medical professionals, or it might also be that they interpret the effects in a different way than the app manufacturer or the BfArM. And I think one thing that was worth remembering here is that when a pharmaceutical company develops a new product, they usually have a huge sales force that they send out to the doctors to inform them about the medical benefits of their products and to do some advertisement. And in the field of the DiGAs, there have been quite a lot of rather few startups and small companies who develop these projects. And obviously, they don't have the economic resources to send out big sales forces to convince doctors of their products or to inform them about the medical benefits. So there might be some lack of communication here compared to innovation in other industries like the pharmaceutical industry. All right, let's keep it for that with the doctors and move on to the adoption of patients. And here I'll hand over to you again, Sven.
Okay, thank you. So On this slide, we'll see who is using the DiGA. So like you can see that women more often use it than men. To explain this, you can put some variables in it, like health competence, digital health competence, also the situation that you have a lot of DiGA regarding mental illness. And if you look into some medical studies, they're addressing that women more often are suffering from mental illness than men. So there are several dimensions you can discuss it on, why women are using more often DiGA than men, but you can see and have some kind of impression about the distribution. On the next slide, I would like to take you into a study we did 3 years ago now, so at the very first beginning of the DiGA. And the study tried to address 2 aspects. The first aspect, the acceptance of health applications in general, and the user experience. The methodology used, as some of you are very familiar with it, I know it, was the UTOT model, so the Unified Theory of Acceptance and Use of Technology, to do some kind of questionnaire on the one hand. On the other hand, we used a more innovative approach using topic modeling to process user comments in the app stores of Android and the iOS system, to look how users connotate the apps. For example, it was very good too, it was very negative too. So to bring words together, that's the idea of topic modeling, to bring words together, or to process them statistically and see whether they form some kind of topic. The research questions also mentioned are here. What we were interested in, what is the status of user acceptance of health applications in general, so addressing mobile health as well as digital health applications, the DiGA. What influences the prescription was interesting for us at this time. What factors influencing the willingness of to use it, and on the other hand, is there some kind of difference between the classical mobile health applications on the one hand, and on the other hand, the digital health applications by processing the user comments. On the next slide, we will see some results for those who are interested in the methods used and the concrete results. You'll find the papers already available, mentioned on the slide, so you can get into it in depth. First of all, we asked the willingness to use it, and like you can see, in general, the persons we asked, they're interested in using it, willingness to use it was very high. On the one hand, on the other hand, it wasn't that important that the app got prescribed by a physician. First of all, we thought it would be important because people would think, okay, higher quality and there's some kind of approval by my physician, but this wasn't the case in the study we did. So prescription wasn't that important. We thought it would be more important than we find out in here. Another important thing on this slide might be if we look onto the differences between those who only used DiGA and those who used both. So was it helpful? Does somebody feel that there is some kind of medical effect? Also, the differences were not that high, or that was lower in the DiGA group. That was also interesting for us, but we have to mention that the study was executed between 2022 and 2023. So at the very first beginning of the DiGA concept, and the situation might have changed, but for those who are working in the DiGA field, you know that's still sometimes problematic to bring DiGA into the system. There are a lot of questions about the real medical effect. For whom is DiGA very good? For the high compliant, non-compliant persons, a lot of questions that are still correlated with this topic. On the next slide, you will find the results of the topic modeling. We looked on negative connotated reviews and positive connotated reviews. Like you can see, there is some difference between, for example, usability. DiGAs were often connotated with software errors. That was also interesting for us because we thought, okay, a DiGA with a certification process, there should be less software errors like app do not start, registration process is difficult, might be also something you should discuss on the whole registration process by entering some kind of code and so on, and then not working. It was a problem. Yeah, and then some special things about in the comparator group, for example, the excessive prices. Yeah, you will get the DiGA refunded or paid. And for the comparator group, the mHealth group, you have to pay if it's not a free app. So you can see that there are some things that are really were really interesting for us, and still some problems exist. So that the quality we would the quality aspects we would attach with the DiGAs do not really exist in this case. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Sven. I would say let's then also move to the last topic for today. Finally, we wanted to present you a bit the economic backgrounds of the digital health applications, and also wanted to deep dive into the scientific proof that you have to bring. And by that, actually ask the question, is it a scientific real innovation, or is all this actually only an economic hype that is supporting the startup community in Germany? And let's jump right in. So on this slide, I have summarized for you the different aspects that you can work on if you want to provide the positive care effects. So the scientific proof that you have to bring to register a digital health application. And these positive care effects, as they are defined in the law, are combined of two different aspects. The first aspect are medical benefits. So this could be improving the health of the patient, or improving quality of life, reducing the duration of the illness, and so on. Or the other part, they call it patient-relevant procedural and structural improvements. So here they look into aspects like patient-physician interaction, or making the everyday life of the patient easier, making it easier to get support or the relevant medication and so on. And if you want to register as a DiGA, and if you want to bring the scientific proof that you have a positive care effect, you can choose actually one of these categories, or you can also choose more, of course, but at least one has to be fulfilled to get the reimbursement from the health insurance companies. And now I wanted to come back to this preliminary listing as a DiGA when you don't have a scientific proof yet. This is something that's very new, and that actually breaks with all the market logics that we had in the past in the healthcare system in Germany, because somehow you transfer the risk of the development of a new product here to the costs of the general society or the statutory health insurance companies, because DiGA manufacturers can enter the market here without having any proof that their apps actually work or bring a benefit to the patients, and they get a reimbursement for 12 months. And then after these 12 months, there will be an evaluation, and only if this evaluation is positive, then they, of course, can continue. But yeah, I think it's quite interesting here that the system changes. Like a pharmaceutical company, if they develop a new drug, they have to do all the study 1 or phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 studies, and all the preclinical studies. They invest huge amounts of money into a new drug before they can enter the market. And of course, they hold all the risk of development and the scientific and the money for creating the scientific evidence. But here with the DiGA, there's a change in the system, and the DiGA companies get a reimbursement already in the first year. And then after this first year, there's a price negotiation. And at the beginning, the DiGA providers were free to choose any price, which resulted in some very huge price differences. So there was a tendency to demand rather high prices before entering the price negotiations. And then afterwards, some DiGA providers were reduced in their reimbursement quite drastically. And they also had to pay back some of their payments, which actually led to bankruptcy of some of these DiGA providers in the past. So especially the ones that had quite a lot of users, like Sanadio, which is an obesity app again, they had quite some problems in the past, because after these 12 months, their reimbursement got cut down quite drastically. Here's an overview of some DiGA price negotiations that took place during the last years. And for example, here in this price correction column, you can see that there almost everywhere quite significant reductions in the total amount of pricing that was paid after this 12 months period. And we have investigated this economic aspect of DiGA quite a bit in our scientific group in the past. And one study that we did here is that we tried to analyze different reimbursement systems, and I've seen that some person in the chat has also written down a question on that. So right now in the DiGA field, it's pretty much the price negotiation, and then the DiGA provider gets a fixed price from the health insurance company for usually three months period of time. And once the patient signs up for the DiGA, then the reimbursement is given to the DiGA provider. And it doesn't actually matter whether the patient uses the app afterwards. And it also doesn't matter whether the DiGA shows any benefit to these patients. The DiGA manufacturer gets the reimbursement anyways. So what we tried here is that we wanted to evaluate different or alternative pricing models for DiGA together with mHealth producers, but also with SHI representatives. And one thing that came out is that both of these groups, so the SHI and the mHealth providers, agree that actually a value-based care pricing model would be quite fair and has a high importance in the reimbursement of digital health applications. And one other thing that we tested was different price models, for example, with external prices and comparison to similar services in the healthcare system. Or we also looked at usage-based pricing models. So whenever the patient uses the app, only then the SHI gets a reimbursement. The DiGA provider gets the reimbursement. That's, of course, something that's very attractive for the SHI companies, and the DiGA providers are a bit more hesitant. Of course, there is a natural conflict of interest here. But we felt it was very interesting to see that this value-based pricing model was something those could agree on. And this is also something that will be newly implemented starting off next year. At the beginning of 2026, DiGA providers will have to provide also evidence on user experience metrics like daily usage and so on. And now, last but not least, I want to present you one more study where we tried to evaluate the economic impact of DiGA in Germany. And what we did is we created a Markov simulation for apps in the field of depression. So a Markov simulation is actually a health economic model where you define a cohort, and this cohort walks through a certain disease, and you evaluate or you simulate how many costs will be created for treatment and everything. And you also look at how does the disease impact the quality of life of these patients. And to do this simulation, you have to define certain health status. So for depression, that could be a mild, moderate, and severe depression. You could be in remission, or you could die from the depression. And then there's always a transition probability between these states. And with this transition probability, you can then simulate a large cohort and evaluate how high will be the costs when this cohort gets a treatment with DiGA, or whether it doesn't get a treatment. And results from this actually show that DiGA can actually improve the quality of life. So in a large cohort for depression, the patients would gain 0.02 QALYs at an additional cost of 1,536 euro per patient. So that means, to break it down, that the healthcare system needs to pay 1,536 euros to gain 7 days in full health for one patient with depression. Now you can decide on yourself whether this is an economic hype or whether this is a large innovation for the healthcare system. What we also calculated in this study is how much would a DiGA need to cost to be a dominant strategy? A dominant treatment strategy in the health economic field is actually a treatment that saves costs and also at the same time improves the health of the society. This is more or less the ideal for a new treatment approach. And we found out that a DiGA for depression should cost around 20 euros with our parameters that we choose for this model to be this dominant or to result in a dominant treatment strategy where the health system saves money and also improves the health of the society. And compared to that, nowadays, the average price for a depression app is at 232 euro. So almost a factor of 10 in between. And it will be interesting to see how these prices will develop in the future. And I think one part that needs to be kept in mind here is that if you're a pharmaceutical company and you create a new product, you usually have a patent protection for a couple of years. But then in the digital health field, it's not that easy to protect your intellectual property because the apps are quite easily reproduced and it's not so complicated to create a Me Too app, so to say. Therefore, this price protection that also allows and the financing of expensive preclinical studies and so on is not so well given in the field of the digital health apps. So it will be interesting to see here how the market develops in the future and whether we see more apps actually going bankrupt or whether the prices will be adjusted and there will be a higher adoption of digital health applications in the future. With that, I want to say a huge thank you for staying with us despite the heat. And we hope that we can now join with all of you into a heatful discussion on digital health applications. And I'm very happy to answer any questions that might come up.
Yes, thank you, Sven and Leonard, for this great presentation. And the presentation is being recorded and will be available for all of you on the webpage if you want to listen to the presentation again. So, yeah, I might to hand over any questions from the audience.
Yep.
There were some questions in the chat as far as I see.
Yep. So if you have any questions, you can ask in German, in English. Yeah, for sure. I think for us it will be easier in German, but it doesn't matter. So,
Okay.
feel free.
And Andreas Krupp here. Let me
Yeah.
start with the question round. I think the pharma argumentation, and I also worked for most of my professional life supporting, I'm a medical informatics guy, but supporting pharma in the development of drugs and diagnostics and the development of tests and treatments. I think their opposition is always like a value-based one, right? Because it's never like, oh, we need to, how to say that, we need X amount of money to produce our product, and then there's a margin of 100%, and that's nice, and that's the price of the product, right? It's always like, okay, what's the alternative? What's the value for society or for this person, because he still can continue to work with when he takes our drug, or he can survive in the sense of cancer drugs, or has a better kind of ability to live, right? And this kind of stuff. I think that the topic with the DiGAs, I think it's it should go into the same direction. So because let's say we've seen obesity, psychology, and I think there's also quite a few DiGAs around. What is it? Yeah, muscle problems and where kind of it helps So I think the topic is always, can you get a treatment? Because we take this for granted, but it's not given in Germany, for example, to get a good psychiatrist. I mean, there's not so many good ones around, right? And the good ones are blocked out for the next 2 years. So that means maybe you just don't get a treatment, right? And that's why people try to get this prescription and then get some help, right? Because they have a lack of support, this kind of stuff. I mean, I think we have to also take this effect into account, right? What's your opinion about that?
So, okay, that was a large question, I would say. Perhaps what would be your concrete question? So,
I mean, what is your opinion regarding the value-based approach and my suspicion that sometimes it's really like the lack of, how to say that, consistent treatment possibility with the current medical system that lets people to say, hey, I want to maybe
okay,
take
yeah.
my mobile app, right? Yeah.
Would you like to start, Leonard, or?
Sure. I mean, coming to the value-based part, I think the attractive thing in the field of the DiGA is that the DiGA companies actually collect quite a lot of information about usage or how patients use their product, and they can also put surveys and ask them how well they are feeling and how the development of their diseases are and so on. So these patient-related outcome measures are actually quite easy to measure in the field of digital health applications, and I think this is something that makes it very prone to or very well suited for actually value-based care approaches, and they could also more or less work as a blueprint for other industries like the pharmaceutical industries, where it's a lot harder to actually measure how much pills have been taken and how the patients are feeling, because the pharmaceutical company doesn't have a direct access to the patients. And therefore, I think it's a very promising environment, and I'm quite confident that there will be more endeavors to actually measure these patient outcomes and to swift more towards a value-based pricing approach.
Yeah, thank you.
But aren't there other risks? So I would then, if Andreas is taking the value-based measuring argumentation, I would take the side of the DiGA manufacturers. And let me just share the link to our first DiGA workshop we did, I think, in 2022. So there was another time at that time how to certify something, interesting talks over there as well. So my question is, if you are analyzing the use of the applications and making that a relevant parameter to determine the funding, that might press users to regularly use that application. Like when you go with the pharmaceutical way, and you would get more as a company when users for long-term use your medication, then you are on a different optimization trajectory. So just as a question, do we really want to go there? And that's an open question you might not answer. But maybe you could as well determine, so in discussion with companies, DiGA manufacturers, I've understood that the fact that they can't record that much user information, how are they using their applications and all these aspects, was really a challenging one for designing suitable applications, because they were only allowed due to data regulation, specific data regulation requirements, to record a minimum of user activity, and thereby couldn't optimize the applications to a degree because they just didn't know. So maybe you could go a little bit to the details since when that had changed, because for the new funding, let's say, scheme, it seems that they need extra information.
So I would maybe I would put another question onto it to more or less answer the question, because now we can talk about the value in healthcare, but when it comes up to DiGA, DiGAs are not really integrated into health supply. So now you're asking about the certification, usability, and does it all make sense? The application, we can optimize the application the next 5 years, but I think the larger problem for me is that DiGA, when I talk to our physician, they are not really integrated into healthcare because you won't get any kind of feedback. You prescribe the app, push your patient normally onto his or her way for the 90 days, and maybe they will come back and give some kind of feedback. I've used it, I've not used it, I've used it very often. So it's not really integrated, and for us also it's important to discuss the point we should discuss, where to optimize what. So we can optimize the technology, and we can record data about the usage and so on. But at the end, the whole concept is not integrated into health supply, and that's the largest problem, I think, to have a real benefit, because you have the stories about patients with high comorbidity, often not that compliant, and you would like to try to push this technology to those kind of patients, often correlated with lower health literacy or digital health literacy. So you have a lot of problems that I would say inhibit the real effects of this technology, and therefore you won't get into a real business. It might not fit to the topic of mental illness. That's a very special case of undersupply, but in other cases, it might really be difficult to push this technology into it without having an idea how to improve health supply and what the concept is to reimburse the physicians by treating using some kind of DiGA. So a lot of problems I see, not only regarding the technological level.
Yeah, so
might
thanks
not
a
be
lot.
the pointed answer to your question, but this is what's driving me, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think there are multi-dimensional aspects. A lot of domains are acting on that. So there are a lot of questions in the chat. I want to give you the room to just activate your microphone. If you don't like to keep off your...
For example, I see some question from Till. You had.
Hi.
Hola, Till.
Sure. Yeah, we talked about the value-based one, then maybe we should move to the risk class question. I think in the chat we noted that most DiGA are low risk class, and interestingly, the regulator opened this up last year that 2B is feasible. I recently joined a reunion of the Digital Health Committee of one of the larger pharmaceutical Verbände, how do you like, industry associations. And among that group and in other places, I haven't heard of any project that is aspiring to get a 2B certification. Even beyond that, I've heard varying opinions of what a 2B class DiGA could be. So now I'm not an expert in medical device risk classifications. I know some like they use sensors, right? The Syncephalea, which also just filed bankruptcy. So what could be a 2B class DiGA? Would it use AI to like offer a therapy, or what's your view on that question? I see Leonard nodding.
Yeah, so I'm also not a medical product expert, but as far as I know, 2B means that the app interprets medical data and takes medical decisions. So for example, if you have an implanted insulin pump in your body, then you could have a continuous blood monitoring within your blood, and the app will monitor your blood sugar levels. And then once the blood sugar level gets too high, then it will start extracting insulin via the pump and keep your blood sugar levels at the same level. That would be, from my understanding, a 2B device, because there is a high risk if the pump gives you too much or too little insulin, you might die. And it makes this decision without any human involved. The other thing where I could see 2B products is indeed with AI. We have seen that there's quite a lot of apps that treat psychological conditions. And I think here in the future, there will be companies developing AIs that talk to patients and mimicking psychotherapy. And this interaction, of course, is also based on interpretation of data or on patient comments. And here I could also see 2B DiGAs coming up.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I guess it's a long way until we will have the AI therapist, but as a matter of fact, it's happening already, right? One of the number one uses of ChatGPT is a psychological assistant and mental health. So you would rather want to have an AI provider that has the experience in the medical health field and knows the standard treatments and medical guidelines, rather than a general purpose large language model that's trained on all kinds of things. So I guess we all agree we want that. But what I heard from the companies that are now moving down that path, we recently had a talk with Vincent Bremer, head of analytics at Hello Better. What I understood is that they try to put it into the prevention path and prevention business model, not the highly regulated DiGA path. So
another topic where the 2B discussion came up a lot was during the COVID pandemic, where a lot of companies tried to develop monitoring software. So monitoring the O2 level of or O2 saturation of patients with COVID disease. And then if there is an automatic alert to someone, that might classify as a 2B device as well, because the software somehow risk stratifies your patients and then takes decisions. And yeah, this is also something where this could come up if you want to develop an app.
I also think that alerting is a very important case because it's a lot of risk about survive or death. So if you're having real-time monitoring systems, and as you can also see by some companies offering glucose measuring systems, they are often certified as class 2B, as it's all about giving the right alert at the right time to the right place. And if you do not have it, then might be that the patient will die or the person will die. And that's a critical system. You also have it in intensive care. It's not DiGA, but I think you can see that alerting is always a critical thing. We can find Class B products also in the future.
Maybe I could add in the question of Marcel Schepelmann in that regard, in case he does not want to ask it personally.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's asking, like, considering the DiGAs which are available, there are some which are just for diagnostics in the way of scanning of birthmarks, suggesting to go to the dermatologist. In such a case, there is no illness that would prompt me to go to the doctor and get a prescription. Would the second option then be used where I skip the prescription and contact the health insurance company directly? Or so in which way is it made available to the patients, and how do you? So I would add on, how would you then measure the suitability of the treatment?
So I think one discussion here that comes up is that you need to keep in mind that DiGAs are only allowed for the treatment of diseases and not that much for prevention. So especially primary prevention. So the prevention that you actually get the disease is not allowed to be registered as a DiGA. So for example, if you have a sports app that helps you do sports, then this is supposed to keep you healthy, and therefore you cannot register this as a DiGA. That is very important to keep in mind. If you then have the photo app that scans your skin for skin cancer, this is slightly different because here the cancer might already exist and you're trying to detect this early. And in this case, this would classify then as a DiGA because you might have the disease here and take a picture of that, and this will allow you to get early treatment. And then there was a second part to the question, right? That
no, I think it's fine. Yeah, it's well done. So to point out, like, it depends on medical device regulation. If it falls under, and all DiGA applications fall under medical device regulation. However, there might be multiple apps which manufacturers decided not to become a DiGA and just remain in medical device regulated software because they have different aims and don't want to go the fully funded by health insurance companies mainstream.
There's also always the option to create a Selektivvertrag with a Krankenkasse. So if you don't want to do all the registration process with the BfArM, you could also create a very good app, convince a statutory health insurance that this is a good app, and they can contract with you a certain reimbursement for this app. There is a way to do that outside the DiGA space, of course. And then, yeah, there's still this huge area of other apps that you can just download in the App Store, but they have no certification or anything. They can be good, but they can also be very bad. You simply don't know it.
Sven wanted to add on.
Okay, yeah, I think that also to put some important term into it, the intended use. You as a company define the intended use, the Zweckbestimmung, what's the aim of your product, and this is also sometimes misleading. You can say it's only for your personal documentation and not for therapeutical aims or other things, and trying to get you out of the MDR. This is always under discussion how to cope with this situation, but you will drive into problems also with Selektivverträge. We had a session last week with one large health insurance. So, and they will also pay attention to the your right classification. So if you say, if you will go to the health insurance and say, okay, I have defined my intended use, and I don't think that this is for treatment and so on. I think that's here for personal use. They won't believe you. It might be your your aim to get you out of the MDR, but this won't work regarding your business model, because other persons will ask you whether you have done the certification process. This is painful because you have to do the studies, and it's quite not that easy to do this, and you have to pay for this, and this also requires you to obtain some kind of money before you get, for example, a Selektivvertrag.
Excellent. We could go deeper into, but there's a question of Charlotte and Lars. Do you want to ask it on your own? No.
Yeah,
Oh,
I might,
yes.
I may. So I'm the last part, Charlotte and Lars. So I guess it's perhaps not either or decision between the apps and the pharmaceutical treatment, because some of the patients may tend to prefer the drug treatment, and others may prefer, like in psychotherapy, the treatment via an app. And so do you see the chance, and how do you judge it for the future, if we go that the primary care physician numbers are going down in Germany? Should this be a focus of the app development to get a tighter connection to the patient and these treatments?
Well, I might be biased a bit here as a medical doctor, and obviously I don't wish to be replaced by an app in the future. I mean, we have the same discussion with AI a bit at the moment, where there's huge potential of artificial intelligence replacing doctors in all kinds of fields. And I think, of course, there are certain tasks that can be replaced by DiGAs. However, I think in the end, the medical field is also a field that benefits a lot from human-human interaction, not only human technology interaction. And therefore, my personal view would be that most likely the DiGA will circumvent shortages in some way, or can like stabilize you until you can see a doctor. But in the end, my expectation is that most patients will nevertheless want to see some kind of human earlier or later. And I think it also makes sense, because there will be an external person that can probably look at certain symptoms in a different way than the patient self-reporting to an app the symptoms. And I think it will help objectivity in the diagnostic process to a certain degree, and also in the treatment part. And therefore, I think it will be an update of our primary care physicians today, but it will not replace them.
And I think I will add something on it. As I'm teaching medical students, more with the technical part, we have a lot of discussion about what should medical students in the future should learn. Should they learn how AI is working and so on? So I think the most important part is to think more about collaboration and cooperation with the digital innovations. When we look into publications, the headlines, the last headline I read was in German, KI schlägt Hausärztinnen in Studie. So it sounds like violence again from AI against humans. So, but this wasn't the intention of the researchers. So they tried to obtain knowledge how both worlds can collaborate and how you can foster diagnostic processes, treatment processes. So I think what is required in the future is that we have knowledge about how physicians work together with such kind of innovations, how they cope situation in which an AI says this is in critical situations and you as a human think, no, this is not the case. Maybe we also have to work on the medical guidelines. So a lot we have to do, but thinking more in terms of collaboration, cooperation, and not in terms of confrontation. What side is better, the human or the technology? Both together should be the best to improve treatment, diagnostic approaches, and so on.
Lars, does that answer your excellent question?
Yes, to a degree.
Go on.
Yeah, I'm Sven. I'm really with you because I guess some years ago the main fear of physicians was Dr. Google. Before that, it was the teacher as a patient, and now it's coming the AIs, the patient that can use an AI. But I guess we as physicians have to deal with the situation that the patients have already take a consult with the AI, and not only the physicians have to deal with the apps, but the physicians have to deal with the patients who deal with the apps.
Yeah. For example, yesterday I had a one-day meeting with Danish partners, as I'm collaborating with the Danish health system since more than 10 years. So, and they, for example, are fostering the concept of shared decision-making. And this is generally, for us in Germany, a more or less new concept. We are also talking about shared decision-making a lot since 20 years, but you won't find it, I would say. But they are also discussing is regarding the use of AI during treatment, case management, how shared decision-making can be fostered by delivering the same information to the physician and the patient, but in another manner so that the patient also can understand it and that they can get in some kind of discussion. And this might be the vision, but it relies on us whether we are interested in such kind of vision, fostering it. So fostering more the communication between a patient and a human, so a physician, or if our vision is so okay in the future, patients will talk to AI chatbots and so on, and we won't need physicians anymore as a human. I don't think this is not my vision, but we as a society should work on it to define what is our vision of health supply in the future, and to define the way we should treat patients.
If there are no more questions we have overseen in the chat or elsewhere.
Maybe there are a lot more, but as always, you can get in touch with us afterwards. That's no problem. And then we will find enough room to discuss the topics that are open. We can push this discussion into a philosophical discussion and would need some kind of red wine and cheese. Might be not the situation today, having 40 degrees more. We would need some kind of sparkling white wine. But we are interested in such kind of discussion because we are also interested in transforming the healthcare system, not only in a digital way. We are also like to exchange with physicians, persons who are treating in the reality, to look what is required to push digitalization into the system in an intelligent way, and not only by having technology and we have to push, asking how we can improve health supply. Yeah.
Would totally agree. And I mean, in 2 weeks, so the next week will be no show because there was appointments preventing the next week's presentation. So next week, for the first time, the XtraTracks this year is no XtraTracks, and then the week afterwards, we see Sven Meister at least again, then together with Stefan Spieren, presenting the Digitale Gesundheitsanwendungen. So we are in a similar topic, and then maybe we could just extend the discussion over to that session. Let me thank you, Sven Meister, Leonard, Fehring, for this great, excellent presentation. I totally agree. There are a lot of open questions, and yeah.